Welcome to Dreamy Tales English. I'm David. Tonight, we have a special story for you. It's called The Ink Shop of Westlake. Westlake in Hangzhou has been called the most beautiful lake in China for over 1,000 years. Its shores are lined with willow trees that dip their branches into the water, like calligraphers dipping brushes into ink. In spring, the peach blossoms bloom pink and white along the causeways. In autumn, the lotus stems stand tall and dry, their brown heads bowed like monks in prayer. And in winter, when the lake freezes over and the mountains wear hats of snow, Westlake looks like a painting, not a real place, but a painting made by a master hand. In the old part of the city, just a short walk from the lake, there's a narrow street called Inkstone Lane. It gets its name from the small shops that once lined it. Shops that sold ink sticks, brushes, and paper for calligraphy and painting. Most of those shops have closed in recent years, replaced by souvenir stores and coffee shops. But one remains. The shop is called Yan's Ink, and it has been there for over 200 years. The current owner is a man named Master Yan, who is 72 years old and has been making ink sticks since he was 18. An ink stick is a compressed block of soot and glue, shaped into a rectangular bar and stamped with gold characters. To use it, you grind it against a stone slab with water, and slowly, patiently, a dark liquid forms. Ink, the lifeblood of Chinese calligraphy and painting. Master Yan's hands were rough and stained black from decades of handling soot. His face was lined like the bark of an old tree, but his eyes were bright and clear. He spoke little, but when he did, his words were measured and precise, like each syllable had been weighed before leaving his mouth. He was 29 years old when she first walked into Yan's Ink. She was a graphic designer in Shanghai, working on branding projects for fashion companies and tech startups. Her life was fast and colorful, bright screens, tight deadlines, endless meetings. But lately, she had been feeling restless. The designs she created felt hollow. The brand she promoted felt meaningless. And every evening, when she returned to her apartment and looked at the city lights through her window, she wondered if this was all there was. She had come to Hangzhou on a weekend trip, drawn by a memory she couldn't quite place. A memory of her grandfather, who had taught her to hold a brush when she was 6 years old. He had died when she was 12, and she had not held a brush since. But on this particular Saturday morning, she found herself walking down Inkstone Lane, looking for something she could not name. And then she saw it. A small wooden sign, faded but legible, hanging above a narrow doorway. Yan's Ink. She pushed open the door. The inside smelled of pine soot and aged wood. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with ink sticks of different shapes and sizes. Some smooth and glossy, some rough and textured, some carved with dragons, and others with simple characters. On the back wall hung a large calligraphy scroll, its black ink faded but still legible. Xin Jing Ru Soi. When the heart is still, the water is clear. Behind a workbench sat Master Yan, grinding an ink stick against a stone slab with slow, rhythmic movements. He looked up as she entered, nodded once, and returned to his work. He stood there for a moment, unsure of what to say. Then she pointed to the ink sticks on the shelf. "How much is that one?" Master Yan set down his grinding stone and looked at her. "You don't want to buy it. You want to make it. You beat ink it. How did you know that?" "Your hands," he said simply. "They're callous from holding a pen, but they're tense. You're used to rushing. Making ink requires patience. You have it in you, but you've forgotten how to use it." He felt a strange sensation in her chest. Not quite sadness, not quite anger, but something in between. She wanted to leave. Instead, she sat down. "Show me," she said. Master Yin studied her for a long moment. Then he stood, walked to a cabinet in the back, and returned with a small wooden box. Inside were the ingredients for making ink: pine soot, animal glue, camphor, and a handful of rare herbs. "Ink is not just a material," he said, placing the box on the counter. "It is a philosophy. The soot represents the darkness, the unknown, the difficult, the things we cannot see. The glue represents connection, the relationships that hold us together. The camphor represents clarity, the ability to cut through confusion and see clearly. And the herbs represent balance, the harmony between all things." He picked up a small wooden mold and demonstrated how to mix the ingredients. Add water, stir slowly in one direction, and pour the mixture into the mold. You will leave it for 7 days. When it is dry, you will carve your name into the surface. And when you are ready, you will grind it against the stone and write something true. He watched him work. She noticed the precision of his movements, the way his hands moved with a certainty that came from decades of practice. She noticed the soot staining his fingertips, the ink stains on his apron, the calluses on his palms. These were not the hands of a man who chased trends or followed fads. These were the hands of a man who had chosen one thing and devoted his life to it. "I don't know if I can do this," she said. Master Yin looked at her. "You don't have to know. You just have to try." She stayed in Hangzhou for 2 weeks. Every morning, she walked down Inkstone Lane and sat in Master Yin's shop, watching him work, asking questions, learning. She learned how to choose the right soot, how to mix the glue without creating bubbles, how to carve characters with a small knife, how to grind ink with steady, circular motions. She learned that making ink was not a quick process. It required patience, precision, and a willingness to accept failure. Her first batch cracked. Her second batch was too soft. Her third batch smelled wrong. The camphor had been mixed in too late. But on her fourth attempt, Master Yin picked up the ink stick, examined it closely, and nodded. "This one," he said, "is good." He held the ink stick in her hands. It was cool and smooth, with her name carved in elegant characters on the surface. She felt a lump in her throat. "Thank you," she said. Master Yin shook his head. "Thank yourself. You did the work." On her last day in Hangzhou, he bought a small stone grinding slab and a bottle of water. She sat by the window in her hotel room and began to grind the ink stick she had made. Slowly, patiently, dark liquid formed on the stone. She dipped her brush into it, placed a brush on a sheet of rice paper, and wrote a single character. "Jing, stillness." She held the paper up to the light and looked at the character. The ink was rich and deep, with subtle variations in tone. Darker where she had pressed harder, lighter where she had pulled back. It was imperfect, but it was hers. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever created. When she returned to Shanghai, she did not go back to her job at the design firm. She resigned and opened a small studio in the old part of the city, a studio where she taught calligraphy and ink making to young people who, like her, had been searching for something real in a world that felt increasingly artificial. Every evening, as she sat at her desk grinding ink and watching the dark liquid form, she thought of Master Yin and his words. "You don't have to know. You just have to try." And in that simple sentence, she found everything she had been looking for. Good night and sweet dreams.